We asked some of our GBS staff to create a story from their wildest imaginations. The catch is everything they say plays out on the screen. What will happen on this episode of Hilltop Tales? We have no clue.
The main character of this story is a mysterious man named Seamus McHaney. Seamus is a private detective. Seamus wears a trench coat all the time, including in the summer with high heat and high humidity. Most people don't actually know what Seamus looks like because his fedora is nearly to the turned up collar of his trench coat. And anytime he's outside, he adds dark sunglasses. So Seamus serves as a private detective, but it's a really small town. And so he frequently struggles for business. Sometimes he does odd side jobs. For example, he cuts grass in the summer. Sometimes that's difficult, what with the trench coat, the fedora, the sunglasses, and he's a little slow, making sure he gets all of the rows just right with that beautiful alternating pattern, that basket weave look. Occasionally, mid-mowing job, Seamus gets interrupted by a crisis that calls for him to shift into detective mode. That's what happened the day our story begins.
Seamus could not believe his ears. He had actually gotten a call, the first one in like a week or so, and to his favorite place, Raiders, right down the hill. He didn't even have to hop in his car. If he was fast enough, he could even take a scooter. Seamus grabbed his scooter and headed down the hill as fast as he could. When he arrived at Grader's, he flung open the door, trench coat and all, and was ready to take on the case. He looked around. He asked Jimmy, "What has been going on here?" And Jimmy said, "I don't know. I just noticed that all of the raspberry chip ice cream is missing out of the case, and it was here this morning. Someone has taken the raspberry chip ice cream." Well, I'm all about that. I knew what I should do. First, I would bargain with Jimmy. "Jimmy, if I'm going to solve this case, I want caramel macchiato ice cream. And not just a scoop. I want a scoop a day for the next week." Jimmy smirked. He knew how much ice cream went out through this store, and I should have been paying attention. But he grinned and smiled and said, "Yeah, Seamus, you can have that." With that settled, my pay, I began to look around. I looked on the floor. I looked at the ceiling. I looked at that window over there. Really close to the street, I thought. I bet they came through the window. I examined the window closer. There wasn't anything happening at the window, so maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was the back door. But I'm Seamus McHaney, and I know about heists, and I know about ice cream, and I know about detective work. And so I looked around a little bit longer until I saw it. There it was in plain view.
He saw the spot on the floor, and it was a big chunk of the raspberry chocolate chip. Unbeknownst to the criminal, he actually stepped in it, and what was the guy's name? Seamus. Yes, and what Seamus, he really liked to be called Shame. That was his preferred name. But what Shame saw was the guy's footprint. Actually, though, it wasn't a guy. It was a girl. And so, with his great detective skills, he began to follow that chocolate spot wherever it went. He looked up, and he saw a nice, large brick building and went straight into the building that was in front of him. And you won't believe what he saw. Shane saw a little tiny dog. It almost reminded him of a rat. And then he remembered an obscure detail that he had forgotten when he was looking so intently at the high-heeled footprint in the chocolate down at Grader's. And that was there were little paw prints alongside of it as well. He saw the dog. He raced over to grab the dog, but the lady holding the leash on the dog shrieked and raced away and locked herself in a room just down the hall. Shame, very cautiously, peered down the hall and then tentatively began to walk down. He knocked on the door and he heard a voice on the other side say, "Shame, it's not me." He thought, how did this lady know my name? I am this obscure guy that lives an obscure life with my overcoat and sunglasses and fedora. Nobody knows who I am. And it terrified him so bad that he turned and raced down the hall and then went outside.
Seamus, or Shame, was shocked by the knowledge that someone knew who he was in a place he had never been before. And the footprints that he had seen had led him to this place. And in his mind, he told himself, Shame, you can do this. You can find a way to solve this mystery. He walked out that breezeway and heard a sound. And it turned out it was a sound of a little girl, and she was crying. She was sitting on a bench, just sobbing. And Shame walked up to her and said, "Little girl, why are you crying? What's wrong?" She looked back at Shame, and her body was still shaking, but her tears slowly began to stop. She was breathing hard. She didn't know what to say to him. And all of a sudden, Shame remembered his secret weapon. This was what he would always use when he didn't know what to do and he was trying to encourage someone. So Shame reached into that trench coat and pulled out his harmonica. He lifted it to his lips and he began to play a melody. And it was one that the little girl knew. It was, "Mary had a little lamb. His fleece was white as snow." Slowly, the little girl changed. She no longer was crying. Now she was smiling as she heard that familiar tune, and it soothed her. She looked back at Shame and said, "Thank you, sir. Thank you. You've made my day." And just as he stopped playing and was going to ask her if she had seen anybody with ice cream or had heard anything about that, he realized that she was gone. She had slipped down a staircase and left. Shame looked around and realized it was starting to get dark and began to realize as well that it was going to rain. So wrapping his trench coat more tightly around him and tucking his fedora, he too slipped down that staircase and out into the street.
While he's walking down the steps, he sees a little drop of ice cream and sees that there's garbage cans right ahead of him and thinks, "Oh, there's the place that the ice cream could be." He doesn't even realize that there's a dumpster truck backing up to get that load. And he gets hit by it and he says, "Ice cream!" The little girl peeps out behind the other side of the dumpster and realizes that he's in major pain and needed to get to the hospital, and quickly ran him to the hospital.
Just then they reached the hospital. As they ran into the hospital, all of a sudden people came rushing around him. Oh, he looked bad, so sick. Immediately a nurse saw him and said, "Quick, get him into a room. He needs help fast. Call our best doctor." They put Seamus in a bed. He laid there. What had happened? All he had done, he'd been mowing his lawn. All he had done was try to do the right thing. All he had done was answer a call for help. A help for a horrible robbery. A robbery of something more precious than one can even dream. Grater's ice cream. He laid there, and just as he was thinking over his life, everything went black. When Seamus woke up, he was laying in his front lawn. What had happened? His wife was slapping him in the face. "So what are you doing?" Seamus said. "Why are you slapping my face?" "Because," she said, "you're embarrassing me laying in the front lawn. What are you doing?" "I don't know," he said. "I was just at Grater's ice cream. I was just in the hospital." "You're crazy," she said. "Get up. It's too hot out here. Come in and get a drink of water." Oh, Seamus. Seamus was a famous detective. Seamus went through his life doing his best to be the best private detective he could be. But there was one case he would never forget. The case of the black raspberry chocolate chip. The end.